Hello and welcome to the Strong, Healthy, Happy podcast. My name is Deborah. I am your host. I'm here today to talk all about snacking. It's probably one of the biggest challenges women have. Certainly, what they tell and share with me when they are inquiring about coaching, telling me what they're struggling with, and also people and women I speak to in day to day life. Snacking seems to be a really big issue. Before I get into snacking and why it might be happening and what you can do about it, I just want to quickly welcome any new listeners and just to say that this podcast is all about helping women feel strong, healthy, and happy. Manage menopause symptoms, achieve weight loss goals, and feel your strongest, healthiest, and happiest self. If you haven't already subscribed or followed on your preferred listening platform, please do. And it would be so appreciated if you would leave me a 5-star review and a comment because it helps bring my podcast to the attention of other women who would benefit, just like you, from this podcast. So let's crack on with the episode. So, this episode is going to give you a greater understanding about snacking, why it happens, and to help you identify with any of the specific circumstances that lead to the snacking, and also be able to raise your own self awareness as to why it's happening and what little tweaks and changes or self awareness you can implement and some strategies to help you reduce the likelihood of you constantly snacking in the evening. Now, I want to start off by saying that you are certainly not alone. If you are a snacker, and by snacker, I don't mean enjoying a snack. That's fine. I'm talking about the constant snacking usually happens in the evening. Other times that it happens is that dip in the afternoon, sometimes around like that 3 o'clock-ish mark, sort of in between lunch and dinner. And it's really understanding about why this is happening. It might be some really practical things that you can do to help support yourself and reduce snacking. As well as bring your awareness to any emotions or stress that is going on behind the scenes that can often lead to snacking. Now, like I said, it happens to us all. You're certainly not alone. I used to be a really big snacker, and I do enjoy a snack in the evening. And, you know, we're not all perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. Sometimes we don't get things wrong, but I usually can recognize what has led to it. And then can remind myself what I need to do to not let it happen again. But there is things that hopefully you're going to be learning from this podcast. Now, I find that usually snacking tends to happen when women have a weight loss goal. Now, I use women because I don't coach men, you know that. And so I'm not going to make it generic for men and women. I'm just going to talk specifically for women. But when women typically have a weight loss goal, this is when snacking can really creep up. Or not even a weight loss goal, but you're just conscious of your body and maintaining where you are or not gaining weight. And what tends to happen is that when you have this awareness, whether it be weight loss, maintenance, or just this awareness in your body, you tend to focus on eating less, which makes sense in theory, especially if you have a weight loss goal, but it doesn't always make sense in practice, especially if you are struggling with snacking and it's taking you further away from the goal that you have. Now, if you do have a weight loss goal, I really want to emphasize the importance that when dieting is done right, the idea and the goal is to actually eat as much as possible, not as little as possible. But the perception and views we have of what a diet might look like, I mean, I don't have that perception, and nor do my clients. But typically, especially if you've done many diets in the past, they always focus on what you can't have, restriction, over restriction, very low calorie. They can feel quite inhibited. They can be quite miserable. And it's not a pleasurable experience when, in fact, taking care of your health, deciding that you want to lose some weight is a real privilege and it's something that you get to do. And it can be and should be a really positive, enjoyable experience that doesn't feel like you're hard done by, that you have resentment. and that it impacts you negatively. It should be a positive experience. And the idea is that you should be eating as much as possible. And your mindset, instead of being, what can't I have, should be, what can I add? What can I have to improve the volume of my food, the quality of my diet, to support my weight loss goal? Now, I'm not going to get into the detail of that because I've done a whole other episodes on how to eat more and lose weight. And if you haven't listened to them, I really recommend that you go back. There's a 3-part series. But going back to dieting, and you may have done many diets in the past. The term is a yo-yo dieter, where you may have done a diet, you may get results, but it's very hard to hang on to those results. And then you may regain the weight, then you lose the weight, you regain the weight. And that's what a yo-yo dieter is. Now, when you have a history of dieting, what happens is that subconsciously, and they likely are not conscious thoughts, but you have a subconscious belief of previous dieting rules, behaviors, and beliefs that have come alongside the previous diets you've done. It may affect your relationship with certain food types or certain food groups, and it's led to you your thoughts and feelings around certain foods, and the behavior that you feel that you have around these foods. If you've over restricted or cut out food groups or types of foods because, in inverted commas, you lack control around them, what it does over time is build up what's called a scarcity mindset around them. So, for example, and this is like a prime example, I'm going to use Lent because it is coming up as well soon, or is Easter time. But Lent, usually you cut out things that you like. And I've known friends, and I've had a client in the past as well who cut out chocolate for Lent. Now, this is a bit of an all or nothing approach. And this is a bit what you may have experienced in your previous diet, where you've told yourself, I'm not going to have any chocolate. And what happens is, and what happens over Lent is, it's all you think about every day is when you can have chocolate again, when you can have chocolate again. And if you cut it out just from your day-to-day diet, nothing to do with Lent, whatever you can't have, you tend to think about more and more, and you want more. Even if you don't want it, you start to think you want it. And when you finally give in and allow yourself to have chocolate, or Lent comes to an end and you can have chocolate, you tend to overeat on it. And then you overconsume on it until you cut it out again. And what this behavior does is it creates this scarcity mindset of, I better eat it all now and get it out the house because I'm not going to buy it again. You also may have some beliefs around food, or your view and perception around certain foods, where you might view them as bad or fattening or points or sins. And even though you may not be conscious about this feeling towards these foods, if you consume foods that you deem as bad or points or sins or anything negative that you might associate with it, it really affects how you perceive yourself and how you've acted. If you eat a bad food, then you've become a bad person, or you've broken your diet, or you've ruined things, and you speak to yourself in a pretty negative way, and you feel like you're failing when in fact you haven't failed. It just takes time to undo these past thoughts and feelings and behaviors around these certain foods. There's absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying some chocolate when you have a weight loss goal. And over time, you learn to undo these past conditioning and thoughts and feelings, and be able to introduce these foods in a much more moderate way. This is something that I do a lot of work on with my clients. But often, if you have dieting history, it's like you're carrying baggage with every diet you've done, and every rule that you may have unconsciously given yourself or been told to implement as part of the diet. And these can sometimes stay with us, even if we don't consciously think that they're with us anymore. They're there below the surface. Now, when it comes to weight loss, Some of the really common reasons about why snacking happens is going back on the premise that you say you're on a diet, and so you start to eat less. Your food volume is getting as much bang for your calorie buck. If you think of calories like money, you want to be able to spend your money and get as much for the money that you have, as opposed to, if you have a budget, you don't want to blow it on one thing. You want to get lots of things with the money that you have. And it's the same for calories. Whether you're counting calories or not, you want to be having high volume meals where you're getting a lot for the amount of calories that it's cost you. And the way you get a lot is by creating volume from lots of vegetables, from having high protein, lean protein foods, because they keep you fuller for longer. And instead of having a whole plate of food, you tend to have, or a typical dieter tends to have a really like a small plate with a small amount of food on it that really doesn't take very long to eat, doesn't fill you up, and can leave you feeling very hungry. So you're eating too little. Your meals may be too small. They're not high in volume, they're not high in protein, and they don't take long to eat. You may also, when you are eating the particular meal, especially if you're at work, you might be sitting at your desk. You might be working on your laptop or your computer. You may be scrolling on your phone. And so you're distracted whilst you're eating that food. So you're not really present. You're not really noticing the taste, the textures, the type of food you're eating, whether you're even enjoying it. And it's almost like you don't even know you've eaten it and it's all gone. And when you're distracted, you also tend to eat a lot quicker. And so you're less satiated, and your hunger hormone, leptin, that signals, oh, you're reaching fullness now. It's not had time to recognize and release that signal to tell you that you're full. And so you sometimes tend to keep looking for food, or you don't feel full, but you're at work, you've got to carry on. And then it's only when you get home that this hunger can catch up with you. You may also be skipping a meal. Maybe you tell yourself you're not hungry in the morning. And this might be something you've got really used to doing. Oh, I'm not hungry in the morning. And you have trained yourself and convinced yourself you're not hungry in the morning. And you drink a coffee, which suppresses your appetite. And then you get busy, and then you don't realize you're hungry, even though you probably are hungry. And then what happens is it's only later in the day when you're less busy, less distracted. Perhaps the kids are in bed, perhaps you're sitting down watching TV, or perhaps it's earlier than that when you're giving the kids dinner, that all of a sudden you realize I'm really hungry. And that's when you start picking food off the kids' plates or grabbing a snack. And then the snacking never really stops until you go to bed. Or it may not be at that time if, maybe you're not doing kids' dinners. It just tends to hit you in the evening because you are not full, because you have not eaten enough during the day. When you do sort of, I always say like, one snack won't hurt, and it won't hurt. Like one snack won't hurt. But if you haven't eaten enough during the day, that snack, which tends to be a high calorie, small volume of food, it really doesn't hit the sides. And those types of snacks tend to be very palatable, very delicious, and it's really easy to eat a lot of them. And one just never tends to hit the spot. And so before you know it, you've eaten, a number of snacks, and you've actually eaten a very high amount of calories from not very much food volume. And you've probably eaten, highly probable that you've eaten more calories from those snacks had you just had breakfast and had you just had a more substantial lunch, rather than eating so little during the day. And I know it sounds counterproductive to your weight loss goal. Deborah's telling me to eat more, but when you eat more and you get used to eating more substantial meals, and you have them at regular intervals throughout the day. Now, you don't have to have breakfast at 7 a.m. the minute you jump out of bed. You can have a coffee in the morning, but you still need to have breakfast at some point in the morning. And then you need to have lunch around 3-4 hours from breakfast time, whatever time that is. And then you still want to have your evening meal. When you stick to the same meal times, thereabout, roughly the same time, your body starts to get in a rhythm, and it knows that you're going to be getting food, and it knows that it's going to be having a decent amount of food, and it's going to be very nutritious, and it's going to be very filling. And what happens is as you start to do this regularly, you start to regulate your hunger, and you are able to better manage your appetite. And so when the evening comes, you're not all of a sudden being hit with those, oh my God, I'm so hungry. You are much more full, and you are much more satiated. And if your meals have been filling and that they're really attractive, and you're eating foods that you enjoy, and you're not, again, in inverted commas, eating diet food that tends to be like a carrot stick and a dollop of hummus, which is not filling. Yes, there is nutrients in it, but there's no protein, and there's hardly any veg. A few carrot sticks don't count as veg. Enough veg anyway. And so eating at regular meals will really, really help you. And if you think about it logically, if you're currently skipping breakfast or skipping lunch or whatever meal, and you are eating small amounts of food during the day, and you are in this cycle of eating snacks in the evening, what happens is you feel really bad about it. You go to bed and you vow never to let that happen again. And then you almost like punish yourself and pay back for those evening snacks by skipping breakfast and having small meals through the day. And then the cycle keeps repeating. So you have to have an element of trust in yourself that you can break this cycle, and it will mean that you're going to eat more during the day, and trust yourself that you will reduce the amount of snacks that you're having in the evening. And I know this works because it's working on many of my clients who struggled with snacking, and it's something that I've been through myself. I love an evening snack, and I used to skip breakfast, and I used to eat minimal during the day, and then wonder why I could not stop eating in the evening. And it takes a while to get your head around eating like what I call proper dinners at lunchtime. It feels like another dinner in addition to the evening meal. But actually, the calories in 3 substantial meals is a lot less than eating hardly anything and then a shit ton of calories in a very short space of time in the evening. And you will feel so much better from eating more nutritious food. You'll have more energy. You'll be in a better mood. You will feel lighter. You will feel better. You will feel more productive. You just feel better overall than eating all those snacks that tend to be late at night and maybe affecting your sleep, especially if they've been, high sugar and just keeping you awake and not allowing you to sleep. Now, depending on your personal routine, I'm being very generic by saying to eat 3 substantial meals a day. I do have clients who are better off eating 4 smaller meals per day, but they are still at regular intervals, and therefore they are still regulating their hunger and managing their appetite. So you have to look at your routine, your lifestyle, your work commitments, what fits in around your family, and decide whether it's 3 bigger meals or 4 smaller meals, and then enjoy a little bit of what you fancy in the evening. Now, if you are an intermittent faster, or you call yourself an intermittent faster, but actually you're not intermittent fasting, you're really just eating in a window of time, it isn't working if you're snacking in the evening. It's not working because you delaying your first meal, you trying to cut off not eating after your last meal, but then diving headfirst into the biscuit tin or the crisp packet or whatever it might be. Intermittent fasting isn't working for you, and you would be better off with eating more regular meals and managing hunger and appetite a lot better and reducing the snacking in the evening. I've talked about how to create that balanced meal. So you want to be having lean protein and veg. I always recommend to fill half your plate with veg and you've got lots of fiber, which aids your digestion, keeps you full, and protein benefits your health, as well as keeping you fuller for longer. And if you do have a long period of time between lunch and dinner, then of course you can have a snack at this point. And I would always recommend something that's protein based and that is with added fruit, if that's the type of protein you're having. So, for example, protein pudding, protein mousse, protein a yogurt or Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, Sky yogurt, or whatever type of yogurt is your personal preference, is have that with added fruit so that you're adding to it. You're not thinking, what can't I have? You're thinking, what can I have? And you're adding to it. This creates a more substantial snack. You're getting protein in, which keeps you fuller and will keep you tied over till dinner, and you won't be ravenous at dinner. When you get into that ravenous state, it's very hard to eat slowly. And I talked about the importance of eating slowly and not distracted, so that you can slow down, that you can chew your food, that you can eat more slowly and get more pleasure from your meal. And the whole ceremony of eating takes longer, and you will feel more satisfied at the end of the meal. You will notice fullness and you will be able to stop. And then later in the evening, you will better manage enjoying one small snack. And again, think about what you can add to it. Why not add some fruit to it? Okay, I'm just going through my notes. I think I've really covered things. Now, the other thing about snacking that's really important to talk about is recognizing if you're snacking from hunger or snacking due to stress or emotions. And it's really important to understand why you're snacking and what you're feeling. If you're feeling a physical hunger, you tend to want something more nutritious and substantial. And you could always, like I always say, if I can eat, a tuna salad, I know I'm hungry, or a chicken salad, I know I'm hungry. If I'm bored or stressed or tired, that's when I want the high calorie chocolate, whatever it is. That's that type of snack. So it's really important to kind of try and implement, when the thought enters your head to go grab the snack, you want to try and create like a circuit breaker of you taking action and getting the snack, to actually trying to pause for a moment and ask yourself, oh, am I physically hungry? Am I actually hungry? Because if I am, I'm going to eat something substantial and a good, a meal. Or am I emotional hungry? And if you are emotionally hungry, identify what it is that you're feeling and ask yourself, well, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? Am I tired? Am I just bored? Am I angry? Am I frustrated at my day at work? Like, what is it? You need to identify what emotion you're feeling, and then ask yourself, will this biscuit or chocolate or whatever it is help me feel less bored? Will it help me feel less tired? Now, sometimes you may say, yes, it is going to make me feel less tired. But what you don't want is that that's your answer every single time, because then you're not going to achieve the goal that you have, and you're not going to end up losing the weight that you want, and you're not going to feel good for it. So it's understanding, if you're bored, what else can you do that will make you feel less bored? Can you, if what you're watching on TV is not stimulating you, it's boring, then go and do something else. What can you do? Think about an activity. Could be doing a jigsaw puzzle, could be coloring, could be crafting, could be going upstairs and having a bath and reading a book in bed. It could be popping out and doing a short walk. Like, what is it that you can do to take yourself away from the environment and from just emotionally eating, which you don't, it's a short-term dopamine release, but long-term, it's not actually making you feel better, no matter what that emotion is. So it's really important to understand why you're snacking as well, and whether it's physical or emotional hunger. Now, hopefully from this podcast, you've kind of got an idea why snacking might be happening. Is it because you're eating too little during the day? Is it because you're skipping meals? Is it because you're bored? You can identify, and it may not be the same answer for each specific circumstance this is happening to you, but by asking yourself, what is it that you're feeling, physical or emotionally hungry, it's a start to identifying and increasing your self-awareness, as well as your self-awareness around the types of meals that you're eating during the day. Like a cup of soup and a carrot stick and hummus is not a high protein, high vegetable meal. You want to be having as much food as possible. I referenced in the beginning of this podcast how to eat more and lose weight, my 3-part mini series. Really do take a listen to it. And of course, you can reach out to me and you can ask me questions at any time through my social media, my emails in the show notes. And I love to hear from you, and I'm always happy to help. So I hope you've taken something away from this podcast episode all about snacking, why it might be happening, and things that you can raise your awareness to and ask yourself, am I doing these things? Is this me? Do I have an issue around certain foods? Do I perceive them as bad? And is that affecting my behavior around them, as well as all the other things that I've talked about? I will catch up with you on the next one. Please don't forget to share my podcast, this episode, if you found it helpful, with your friends or someone you know would benefit. It would be much appreciated. My goal is to help as many women as possible. And so you sharing my podcast goes a long, long way. Thank you for joining me, and I'll catch up with you on the next one.